As we were saying, it's been like 2 years.
Hmm.
It's actually been, I think, 2 years since I've last spoken to you. I really don't recall like an actual sit down with you since.
Right.
But
SubhanAllah.
a lot's happened since then,
Mm.
and I want to get your take on this. I'm curious if this is just my own subjective view, or if
Hmm.
others can see it this way as well. But things haven't felt very pleasant in life
Hmm.
since 2023.
Hmm.
It kind of feels like the whole zeitgeist has changed.
Hmm.
And good things can happen in life, but it just doesn't feel the same way. And again,
Hmm.
I'm wondering, do you think that's just me subjectively, or have you experienced that? Do you know people that have experienced that?
Nah, SubhanAllah. For some of us, it's like the veil has been pierced. And what I mean by that is like the items that we felt like we had a strong emotional attachment to, uh, we now see through them a bit and we can't feel that same love because we know what they're tied to. For example, I used to be really big on sports, yeah? And over the last 2 years, I've found a natural detachment from the NBA, from the NFL, from a lot of just common figures that I'd follow closely. Because after the operation on October 7th, the way that they would release statements or the way that they would carry themselves and showing themselves within the broader Zionist complex, it kind of shattered that for you, where it's like, I can't actually wear a jersey of LeBron James walking down the street anymore, even though he's my favorite basketball player. But now that I know he's just another elite or celebrity who released the basic we stand with XYZ statements, I'm like, okay, it's part of the system. I can't hear the ESPN theme song I used to love hearing growing up hit the TV because now I'm like, wait a minute. ESPN's owned by Disney. What did ESPN do? What have they been doing? And actually, their money tracks here. It's like, wait a minute. Like, I don't feel like I. So that's like one aspect. That's the veil in terms of the system around us being shown, and now we can't enjoy those things. Then it sounds like what you're hinting to, then there's the really personal side where it's like the birthday that's usually a happy birthday is not as happy. Or that song I used to listen to a lot. Now I actually don't even like feel anything when I hear it. It doesn't give me I don't enjoy an imaginary good vibe that I get from a song anymore. Or spending time with my friends or spending time doing things that I said I love. Nothing really feels the same anymore. And subhanAllah, we can tie it to Palestine and us just seeing the gruel suffering and the onslaught. But also, I would argue the reasons for us to feel this way have always existed. We just haven't been exposed to them. What's been happening in Palestine, I think if we were intimately seen with it, if one of our own family members were the ones that were in prison, one of the thousands of prisoners before Operation of October 7th, we wouldn't feel happiness in our lives anyway. If we were intimately more involved with the injustices that are happening around the corner here in Houston, whether it's at the hands of the police, whether it's at the hands of the government, whether it's at the hands of private companies kicking people out of their homes to build nicer complexes, right? If we were intimately involved there, my argument is this feeling we have now from the last 2 years, we would have felt that long before because the injustices around us are there and apparent. I think that a lot of us, and I can speak for myself, just haven't been as intimately attached. And then it was like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, okay, now this is gonna just completely break through the bubble that you've built for yourself.
Damn, you articulated it very well. I do have similar sentiments to that.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it as well. And like when it comes to the zeitgeist, I feel like the zeitgeist has changed so much, quite literally because of this and how
Hmm.
that veil has been broken, as you said. Um, but I mean, I already know your personal connection to
Sure.
Palestine, but do you feel similarly? that things just haven't been as happy since 2023.
Mm, 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 mm.
Do you think that's a collective gray over everyone?
I think it's different for certain people over others. Um, I think when we can still sit there with a straight face and post an Instagram reel with good vibes music, or sorry, good vibes nasheed or good vibes soundtrack or whatever, showing how we just spent thousands of dollars on the latest event at our masjid. Um, I think there's a dissonance there, there's a disconnect. Um, and I'm not discounting that good work can't still happen in terms of general community building in this time, of course. But something feels like mm, perhaps some of us, this is impacting differently than others. For some of us, this means we are seeing extravagance where we didn't see it before. The way we eat, the way we buy, the way we market things, and so on and so forth. And some of us, maybe it's just a feeling. It's just, I feel bad when I see these images and videos, but I'm just gonna keep going because I can't, uh, because there's nothing I can do. And I think the key there is what we can do. On a personal level, what kills me the most is not witnessing the suffering, but the weight of the responsibility that is hitting me. Like, okay, my name is Mohamad Fattouh. I've been blessed to have a family history in Gaza, which means therefore I have more to share about this than maybe the average person might. I've also been blessed to get to study some Palestinian history, which means I have the burden to share more, maybe the average person can. This and this, I had certain experiences where I feel like it's more, I have a higher duty on me. When in reality, of course, we all have a duty to do what we can. But for me, it's like I think I'm chasing a level of peace that would come from if I feel like I'm doing enough, but I know I'll never be able to say I'm doing enough, and so it's like this never-ending search for a peace and a contentment that I know I can only get from my relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, but it's a struggle and it's one that weighs on me all the time. And then some people, mashallah, they're able to kind of find their niche and then still do everything around it. But at the core of it all, I feel like there is still a disconnect and I think a shortcoming in terms of collectively what we're choosing to even put out there on a public level. Like that example I mentioned about reels or even individually, but I think that could be like a whole maybe separate discussion about what we want to put in front of the world while knowing that a lot of the world is suffering in a way that we feel strongly for.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but I wanted to ask you,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken, all your relatives in Gaza.
Subhanallah. So I've had there have been some like extended family that I actually didn't have the honor to meet. Um that return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we pray that they achieve the highest status that someone can achieve, which is martyrdom. I mean, we pray that they get that status. I mean. And then I've had a good amount that have been dislocated to different places. They left Gaza early on during the onslaught. And subhanAllah, man, like when it happened initially, or like a lot of them were having their houses bombed and so on, because I had just met them, a lot of them for the first time in that summer. So literally like 3 months before October, I had, alhamdulillah, I had just met them for the first time. Before that, they were just like Instagram I told them this directly. I was like, I thought you were fake Instagram bots when I'd get Arabic messages in my DMs for like certain occasions in my life. I'm like, what is this? And then later, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that that last name was just like a different side of the family. I'm like, I was so embarrassed. Uh, and so because I knew them and I knew a little bit of their stories and what I could from being in Gaza for 2 weeks in that summer, a big takeaway I took was that oppression is not uniform.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is like, you could have the same material oppression hit you, the same bomb that hits five people, but it'll affect you all in different ways. The same way if someone walked in to your room right now and punched you in the shoulder and walked into my room and punched me in the shoulder, I guarantee you it's gonna hurt me more because you've got a little more muscle on you, mashallah. Okay? And in that same framework, my cousin who is in his early 20s, who ran a perfume shop for himself in Gaza, the imp and having his father, who had passed away a few years prior from a tragic medical incident, whose mother, my aunt, has breast cancer, with him having the weight of being the man of the house, taking care of his mom and his younger sister, losing his perfume shop, losing his almost full degree that he was finishing up at university, and so on. For him, the experiences of having his home bombed is a completely different experience, right? Than my grandmother, who had been displaced as a child from Haifa in 1948 and pushed to Gaza, and then displaced again in this moment, um, who, when everything first happened, what annoyed me the most, just thinking when my dad told me that her house was bombed, is that she can't walk from this side of the room to that side of the room without someone holding her hand. And to hear that she was rushed out, that she had to have her neighbor tell her and my aunt who was with her, you have to leave the house ASAP, they're gonna bomb. For her to be rushed when she can't walk from this side of the room to that side of the room without someone holding her hand, that's actually what hurt me the most. It's like, how dare you rush my grandmother? You don't have the right to rush her. And I would feel the same if we were at Walmart and someone was telling her, hey, hurry up, old lady. I'd be really angry. You're gonna wait every second it takes here to go from point A to point B. That was just my gut reaction before I could even absorb a home being bombed that raised generations, including my father, and so on and so forth. So for her, that experience as an older woman in a certain physical situation with a history to her home, the oppression is different. My cousin's mom, the aunt I mentioned who has breast cancer, for her, that's a different experience. Having breast cancer now become a secondary concern in her mind with bombings around her. The experiences of the little kids who already before October 7, I was told would have to put on headphones when the bombings would happen at night during the consistent onslaughts that the Zionist army would do against them. Now it's a whole different situation. There are no headphones that are going to protect you from the most consistent onslaught that Gaza's ever seen in its history. So they each have their own kind of different experience in different ways that oppression hits them. And I was blessed to have gotten to know them at least enough a little bit before in that summer to where as everything was happening, I was like, wait a minute, this is not just about figures, facts and figures and the number of deaths and number of injuries and number of houses destroyed and how much infrastructure is still left. It's a lot deeper than that because each of them have their own individual story and this oppression is impacting them each in a different manner. And now even to where a lot of them have gotten pushed to, the ones that are no longer in Gaza, it's different for them now. Those in Turkey are in the middle of a place where you don't speak the language. In Turkey, they don't speak English nor Arabic. So the most simple, and they don't know many people around them, outside of a few other people who were pushed out of Gaza as well. So the most simple thing when I went to visit them just a couple months ago, wanted to buy a fan for their home. Here it's as easy as Google Fan near me. There, I tried doing that, thinking I was the more tech savvy person. I can find them a fan. Took me 3, 4 hours going to different stores, pulling out my phone, using Google Translate to ask for a fan. Like the most simple things, and they don't have someone to just ask and say, "Hey, where'd you buy your fan from?" Very, very simple things. And that's just to illustrate, okay, how hard it is to actually get a job there, to get a degree, to learn the language, to then be able to buy a car and all the simple basic items. That's a different level of that they're now facing there than my grandma who's in Spain now with my aunt, and then different than my relatives in Oman, and then different than my relatives in Jordan, and all the different
Wow.
places. Like the oppression there impacts you differently. And then if you're pushed out, the oppression there is a whole different ball game as well. Not to mention, of course, my aunt and and my cousins and their families who are still in Gaza as we speak, who say, we don't have as much to say anymore besides pray for us, and that the bombing and killing is all around us. and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a reason for everything that He does in His infinite wisdom.
Yeah. You know, I was under the impression this whole time that the majority of your family over there was martyred.
Ah, subhanallah.
Wow. And it's a relief to hear that that is actually not the case. Wow.
To an extent.
To
To
an
an extent,
extent. To an
subhanallah.
extent. Yeah.
Because I would argue, we never wish for people to pass, but those who've gotten to taste martyrdom, that's an honor we can never, you know what I mean? That's an honor we can it's an honor Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will pick and choose as terms of who can taste it, and only Allah knows who's accepted as martyrs. Um, but of course, we don't wish death upon ourselves in any way, shape, or form, of course.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I really loved what you were saying. I don't you maybe you remember a few months back there was a war between India and Pakistan.
Mm, mm, mm,
And my cousin, he was in the Air Force
mm,
and they were at a base and they all left except for one of his friends. And a
mm,
missile hit the base and the guy died, you know? And he had a wife, he had two little kids.
mm,
And I felt so bad because that war was maybe just 4 days or something. And
mm,
it took that guy's life. It's like all of a
mm,
sudden the wife and the kids, I mean,
mm,
that's for the rest of their life. And so that's an isolated incident of a 4 day war. But in
mm,
Gaza, it's like, man, that's been going on for 2 years. That's insane.
SubhanAllah. Well, may Allah grant him the highest level of Jannah.
Yeah.
Ameen.
Mm.
And like you said, bringing in the element about the impact to families or the impact to others, that's, it's an element that's rarely, rarely touched upon. We're always just thinking of, okay, who died, and that's kind of it, as opposed to the impact on the others that were associated with that person.
Yeah. I have to admit, since it's been 2 years, I'm not
Mm,
sure what else to say about the situation.
mm.
Unfortunately, it's awful.
Mm. Yeah, subhanallah. It's interesting because it's like I've found different extremes in terms of how people will try to analyze or try to cope with the moment. You'll have uh, one extreme that's saying, okay, this is horrific. This is uh, this is horrible. Where we've lost all of Palestine, we've lost everything, and that's it. It's like this world is a mess. It's chaos. The ummah is nothing. Muslims are nothing. The world is nothing. Humanity is lost. Blah blah blah. And that's that. And then that's almost like a way to cope, to then go back and do what they and just not feel a sense of responsibility to take any action to contribute to,
Yeah, the
right?
defeatist mentality.
Right, defeatist mentality, exactly. And the other extreme, which is I call angelifying Palestinians and saying, oh man, like, MashaAllah, look at their amazing Islam and their religion, and they are uh they look at them standing their ground, staying tall, seeking martyrdom, willing to, uh, go down without a fight, all these different things. Um, and some of this is real. Like, yes, Palestinians literally putting on Facebook as their last post saying, I'm not leaving my land. For the sake of Allah, I'd rather stay here than listen to these oppressors coming in and kicking me out. Right? And that's the last post, and then subhanAllah, they're martyred. May Allah qadar shuhada. I mean. But this idea that then people will stretch all the way to make it sound like Palestinians are just this one monolith, first of all. And second of all, that they want this, that they want to be oppressed, that they want their houses to be bombed. But when you speak to many Palestinians, and I have some cousins who post regularly and saying like the world has betrayed us. Like this is like they're not no one's happy to be in this situation. Like this is real. Um And what we see is like people will say, "Oh no, they're amazing, blah blah blah. I'm not worried about them, and it's all good. They're fine." And they use that to go into their own little bubble and not have a again sense of responsibility to act. And with these two kind of polar extremes, what's really missing is like a clear like line in the middle where it's like, and Islam, part of its, of course, infinite evidence is the perfect religion, is that it gives us a holistic bubble where it's like, look, we're not gonna despair and have a defeatist mentality and see these people being killed as like losses. No, we know those who are martyred are not actually dead and they're around us. We know that they are actually in a better position than us right now because they're with their Lord and in like a beautiful and a beautiful place of serenity and peace. Uh, and then the other side of it being, but we also know that this material injustice happening should make us scared of why are we allowing this to happen and how is the blood on our hands, especially in the US, and how can that get us to act? And so we have a duty, but also the lack of despair and the idea of framing everything within the bubble of, okay, this life is temporary, but we have a duty in it, and establishing justice is one of our core responsibilities as Muslims. And then boom, we need to move forward from there. Um, yeah, I mean, a quick anecdote, somebody few days ago, I was speaking with him. He also has family in Gaza, and he mentioned he was talking about this extreme that I mentioned about like people just seeing people in Palestine as like, oh, these angels, and they're all good and it's fine. We shouldn't be worried about them. And he said that when he's talked to his family there, uh, they're like, we're staying in our home not because like we're like we want to be bombed and become martyrs. We're staying in our home because there's literally no space to leave. Like, do you not think I want to protect my children and my wife, which by the way is my duty, like to protect them as a man. This is my duty to protect them and not bring them to a person if I can. And there's literally no space. In Gaza City specifically, it's become so just congested and pushed in. There's literally no room to go anywhere. And so many buildings have been destroyed. You can't just go into an empty building here or there and be safe. There's nothing to do. Bombings all around, killings all around. Rubble's all around. Tents are all over the place. There's literally no space. So yes, we're staying where we are, and we pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us. And if we are killed, we pray to get the status of martyrdom. But this is don't look at us as some heroic, brave, amazing, courageous people who are just ready to face the fire in our eyes and take it. And it's
Hmm.
not to downplay the resistance, of course, and the beauty and the strength behind them. It's just to say that we must elevate the resistance, but we cannot again angelify and get ourselves out of actually feeling for Palestinians and them not wanting to face death and destruction in their path.
Yeah, I like how you use that term angelify. And
Hmm.
when I was a kid, I read The Hunger Games.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course.
I watched the movies for the first time recently in
Hmm.
Ramadan, actually, or right after Ramadan.
Hmm.
And I was baffled by how much the resemblance is there between the
Hmm.
politics of that world and what we're seeing
Hmm.
right now, today's day and age.
Hmm.
It's crazy. And I don't think any of that was calculated. I think
Hmm.
that was just, life imitates art, art
Hmm.
imitates life, that kind of a
Hmm.
thing.
SubhanAllah, man. I've always been interested in hearing like where that framing came from. I haven't done the research. Have you seen at all if they were playing off the US by any chance, or have the US in the back of their minds?
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. Well, actually, Suzanne Collins talked about how she was watching what was going on in Iraq, the
Okay.
war, and she was like, "Wow, this is kind of crazy," and that kind of that influenced her.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah, I mean, what you bring up is beautiful. Like, even I'm sure you've heard of like the recent Star Wars series. I haven't watched
I've
it,
never
but
seen Star Wars.
okay, nice. I've heard a lot of things about it and this new like spin-off they did called forgot the name, but this one where like you probably seen a clip that went viral where like someone's using the word genocide in the show and so on and so forth. But this idea that like a lot of art that we have is hitting on key points. Um, to me, it reflects that like, and when we watch the movie, all of us get really into it, you know? I think it reflects that within us all, inside, there is a natural, a natural, I would say, God-given capacity uh, to feel strongly when things around us are being diluted or we're getting an illusion that's coming our way to prop up injustice. I think that's like a key, like, groundwork. Now, here's the thing. We pick and choose where to apply it, I think, based off of what's been fed to us in the US, for example, in Western society, and a lot of like American patriotism and so on and so forth, that we won't apply that to our actual society. We'll see, we'll enjoy it in that bubble and get really into it, but we won't go as far as to apply it here. Why? Because if we were to do that, our heart wouldn't handle it to allow us to sleep well at night. Our heart would make sure that we are scrambling, trying to see what can I do to impact this situation? What can I do to be on the side of the good guys? Because this is just incredible. And this is where, like, to me, a huge turning point that will be required in the Palestine movement will be our ability as a broader society that lives in the US to see through what the US is feeding us and to see the US as not being the United States of Israel as like a common trend has been, but rather to see it that the United States of America and being America first is to support Israel, that is in their interest. But I think it's too much for people to comprehend the America's who wants to kill you, the America who's wants to kill us, because now it's this weird cognitive dissonance. I'm living in a country that doesn't have my best interests in mind. What do you mean? I'm living in a country that is responsible for XYZ. We'd rather offload it and say America is influenced by the lobby. America is controlled by the lobby. America is controlled by XYZ. America is controlled by, but in reality, this is America. And we have 300 years of evidence to show us who America is. We're going to act like the same America that destroyed the indigenous of this country and enslaved people in a hyper-racial way that like we hadn't seen, and instituted Jim Crow and so on and so forth, and taught people in their textbooks at school that these people are inferior over these people, and created organizations and institutions and a banking system and a housing system and all these systems that still exist today based off of a very particular premise of controlling wealth, both in a certain way to push certain classes down and certain races down. We have all of this, and we have all this evidence, both historically and in front of us today. And there's never been a revolution in the history of the US that reset any of this. And then we're going to sit back and say, yeah, the same country that went to Iraq, Afghanistan, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Philippines, plus 70 other countries. Yeah, that whole entity, it's unbelievable what they're doing, supporting Israel and giving them all this money. It's unbelievable to think that the U.S. wants to have an outpost in what they call the Middle East to control and dominate their interests there. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, we need to put an end to that, as if that's not who America is and always has been. And so my dream is for all this art, for us to take it and just draw that line and just draw that line. Mm-mm-mm.
I think that line is being drawn. I don't know about you if you've seen this, but I was surprised myself. I'm like, oh my God, especially in the past few months, it
Mm,
seems like the tide is really changing. Like a lot of people are waking up from what I've seen. But you were saying this is what America's always been.
mm,
Something I always wonder is like, is that really the case? Or were we compromised somewhere in our history? Like what
mm,
happened? Because there's
mm,
something very famous that George Washington said in his farewell speech, which was don't get involved in international affairs permanently. Like
mm,
just stay away from that kind of stuff. So I wonder, like, has it really always been our nation that way, or were we compromised?
mm.
Who knows?
Yeah, that's a great question. Uh, I would say when George Washington said something like that, it was all with an interest in mind. But the whole premise of that statement to me is a fallacy because, like, America being established was an international affair. Where did George Washington come from? Does that make sense? The
Yeah.
whole idea of establishing it was an international project to say we're going to go to this land and establish, establish our own state and government and so on and so forth. Um, and in this international affair of ours, we're going to bring property, what we call property, but are actually people from the continent of Africa. And we're going to use them as our property to make us infinite money and wealth and so on and so forth to lead us to become the richest nation on earth. Like that was all you know what I mean? So the premise, and the US has done a good job of this in terms of a lot of leaders will have certain concepts, phrases, themes. I call it the realm of ideas that are sold to us. But then there's a realm of ideas versus the realm of reality and what what they've accomplished. We've had smooth talkers come our way, like with the likes of Barack Obama. What a good way of being charismatic and engaging people, while drone striking and killing and so on, both in the US and outside the US. And so to me, it's like, again, that phrase America first. It's like, what was America in the beginning? Who were they? Maybe their oppression was more so focused within these borders that they drew up themselves. And they extended off of oppression and so on and so forth. And then as time went on, the oppression continued here and said, okay, now it's in our interest to go and establish items overseas. A lot of times to keep our control over the global economy. And that's, a whole deep dive. But yeah, so yeah, I would say like, we've been taught a lot of people are people to look up to or learn from or are heroes. Like growing up, I used to think Abraham Lincoln was a good guy. He freed the slaves, so on and so forth. But in reality, that wasn't the case. And there were interests, and he was pushed to do what he did. And it was as a result of the resistance of people on the ground and slave revolts and different factors, as opposed to the US waking up one day and saying, hey, we want to follow the abolitionist calls for freedom.
That's another really great point you bring up. It was about a year ago. I had my friend Fawaz on the podcast, and this is before the whole Israel stuff. And
Sure.
I was just telling him, like, bro, how come they talk so much about the assassination of JFK? Like, why is it so relevant anymore? Why is it still like such a big mystery?
Uh,
What's the commotion about?
uh,
And I never really connected those dots myself, like growing up.
hmm,
Recent times have brought up different sentiments, but
hmm,
I think the biggest veil that has been broken, to me personally at least, is
hmm,
wow, how much of our history is actually real? I mean, we get taught
hmm,
so many things,
hmm,
like about the whole globe. How much of
hmm,
that is actually real? You mentioned Abraham Lincoln. I never thought about it, but like, could there have been an alternative reason John Wilkes Booth shot him? Was
hmm,
it more than just, a loyalty to the Confederacy? I
hmm,
wonder,
hmm.
there's a lot of history that there's a lot to think about.
That's a fascinating point. Uh, Learning history changed my life. Actually changed my life. Like actually, I don't know if I shared this with you, but when I was an undergrad, I took this one class at the University of Houston with Dr. Her name was Dr. Gunther. And it was about US history. I signed up for it. It's a requirement. Like I wasn't thinking about it much, whatever. And I'd never been like a big history guy in my life. Like nothing at all. Nothing about memorizing random figures and dates in high school really gave me a passion for that, yeah? And in her class, what she did was she taught us US history through the stories and writings of people close to the Black struggle, the Black freedom struggle, from the indigenous people's perspective, and breaking down really like from point A of how the US was formed all the way through until now. And it changed the way I see the world, like the world, literally. And it changed everything about me. And it pierced that veil for me in that bubble to where that's it. I felt a duty that I had to be involved in some form of organizing for the rest of my life. Um, and what was so like special? Like, what did we learn that was such a? It was learning like what I call the open conspiracies. Okay, that may not be an academically correct term because conspiracy is something that's hidden, and these things, once they were revealed, were no longer hidden. But this idea of an open conspiracy, for example, learning that or learning how manifest destiny was a complete sham and us using religion as a justification to take over more land and kill millions of people. Sounds familiar, aka a certain Zionist ideology, but that's like, just a comparison to keep in the back of our heads. Learning
Could
that, yeah,
pause real quick. Could you
yeah,
explain manifest destiny as a sham?
sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. This idea that God has given us the right to expand as far west as we'd like and take over this land. And it's God, and using in their context Christianity as a tool, as a weapon on the people. And to me, that is the most insulting way to oppress a people is to use a tool that you're connecting to God. Because now you're not making it clear that hey, this is what we want. When you're trying to say this is what God wants, you're messing with the creator of the world, and that's like the highest possible violation I think that you can do. And so when they were saying that this is God telling us to expand to this land, and they use Christianity by the way also when it came to how they would educate the slaves, they would teach them only certain verses of the Bible and hide the ones that were more about like standing up for justice and resisting, but they would highlight the ones about obey your master. So when I learned about this, I'm like, wait, are you serious? And then I'm learning about how they took the indigenous people and they created treaties knowing they were going to break them. They took them into schools and made them shave their heads and made them shave and would whip them if they used their native tongues in schools to get them to become this like Americanized. When I learned these things and then learning what slavery really was, like actually, like what it really was, not that it was just because in school we're whitewashed a bit. We didn't learn about slave revolts and how they stood up and fought back. We didn't learn that was a key turning point for slavery itself to end. We don't learn that after slavery they just transitioned to something called sharecropping, where they would pay you a few cents a year and then make you buy tools that you need that cost more than a few cents a year, so that you're in debt to the owner, and you're basically in a de facto form of slavery. And then that just went to Jim Crow, and the police came from patrolling slaves to patrolling Jim Crow and so on. They didn't teach us these things and what real racism was in the U.S. And it wasn't a North versus South thing, but the North was also just as bad, but just in different ways. All these different things and items and just kind of histories. And I'm like, wait a minute, like when people use these phrases like, oh, black people commit the most crimes, or watch out for the black on black violence and black, I cringe now when I hear these phrases because it's like there's a whole context and history that the government created and oppression that they push on communities that led to black communities being targeted, that led to black youth joining what we call gangs, although I would call the biggest gang.
As
Okay.
you were saying.
Yeah, man. So yeah, just summarizing, that was really important to see that kind of line of history for me. And I was giving it the example of like how we view gangs and so on, and like we're taught about gangs a certain way, when in reality the government's conditions created the rise for quote unquote gangs. But even then, I mean, the biggest gang in the US is the police itself. And like understanding that and understanding how they function and how like uh, when oppression occurs in the US, we're not fighting bad apples, nor are we fighting bad people. We're fighting bad systems. And that changed my life because once I saw that all these things were intentional and explicit and that veil was lifted, I'm like, oh my God, like the tie between private corporations and the government is no accident. Uh, the tie between the police and the quote unquote war on drugs and how they planted drugs to then say we're gonna have a war on drugs and like all these different items, it just changed my perspective very strongly. And then that's not even touching on the global implications of the U.S. establishing itself as an empire around the world. All these things have just given me a very rooted understanding, and that's why what I tell people is like learning history is important because it doesn't affect not because it affects what you think, but because it affects how you think. And that is the most dangerous tool you can have is thinking of the world in a different way that goes beyond what you're being told growing up.
Yeah. Omer Suleiman, he's got this great episode that talks about how Abu Sufyan converted to Islam,
Hmm.
and it's incredible. I highly
Hmm.
recommend people check that out.
Okay, so.
There's a counterintuitive approach I have sometimes when I have this kind of a conversation with people. What if Netanyahu became a Muslim?
Hmm.
Wouldn't that be the craziest plot twist?
Hmm.
Because it feels like with everything going on in the world, we're living in a Marvel movie or something.
Hmm. Yeah, subhanallah, subhanallah. Uh, no, that would be, uh, and like you said, we have historical context where, like, none of this is outside the realm of, the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Uh, but in the moment in practice, it's almost like,
It's crazy to think about.
yeah, and then it's like, I'm sure there are some of us who have it in our hearts, perhaps we're making dua that Allah guides Netanyahu to Islam and away from his oppression. And then there will be some of us who in our hearts are making dua that Allah destroys him in this world and the next. And I think perhaps that's up to people's hearts and their capacities and what they how they view or what they feel. But subhanallah, like you said, we have a historical context, so we can't dismiss or say that it's a negative to do that. As long as people's actions are irrespective of which dua they're making, as long as their actions are focused on stopping the oppression. But it's a beautiful concept to think about, this idea of the mercy that we hold in our hearts, subhanAllah.
Yeah, no, that's something I was thinking about. And I really do feel, especially because we're such a global village now, it really
Hmm.
feels like everyday news is like an ever unfolding Marvel movie or something. Like the news just gets crazier and crazier every day. And I
Yeah.
had a friend I ran into at Jumma one time. I told him something like that. And he's like, dude, the world's always been this way. But as you said earlier,
Hmm.
the veil has been broken, been
Hmm.
pierced through. So now it's just more apparent
Hmm.
to us that, yeah, the world is pretty crazy.
That's a
It
beautiful
has
way
its
to put it.
beauty, but the craze is also there.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it because we'll hear these statements of people saying things like, this is the worst the ummah's ever been in, or this or that. This is the worst state, the worst. Like these very extreme like words used. And it's like, at the end of the day, like, was there not a moment where the fate of Islam depended on one battle? And Rasulullah literally made a dua saying, Ya Allah, like if we lose this war, if we're all killed now, that's it, it's end of Islam. So grant us victory. Right? Like we have a history where actually no, if you really think about it, the Ummah has been in, worse spots. And it's like not to diminish the current state, but it's more so like this idea of like we have to give ourselves a rooted and a grounded starting point. Um, and especially on the point of Muslims specifically, it's interesting because like even in the hypothetical that you mentioned about Abu Sufyan converting, and then about Netanyahu if he were to convert. And to me, the key like distinction would be in the word of a Muslim as well. One, the definition is the one who submits, right? That to me is the key definition. Is would a person converting to Islam actually submit, or would he simply say, I am now a Muslim? And that to me is the scariest thing to think about in this day and age. Because subhanAllah, we're seeing more and more celebrities become Muslim. But what's happening is because we've put them on these high pedestals, and I'm talking just like the average celebrity or elite or whatever it is, we put them on these high pedestals, and we're not letting Islam guide us. We're letting our relationship to viewing them on a high pedestal guide us. So if a big figure we know converts to Islam, we begin to take their information and their takes as if they're representing Islam in their takes, as opposed to someone who is, subhanAllah, could be not Muslim, but the things they're saying are more Muslim than that person. And so it's like not to judge them, but it's more so like we have to be grounded and acknowledge. And then we know there are governments that call themselves Muslim at this exact moment, whose actions are the exact opposite of what a Muslim should be doing. And so it's this like, constant battle for us to not fall into following identities of who calls themselves Muslim, but instead rooting ourselves in submission in practice. That submission to
Yeah.
Allah is actually a true freedom, which people can see is a contradiction.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And going back to the whole thing about just how crazy things are,
Mm,
something I think about is, you know, imagine a person who lived a very regular life in Jerusalem,
mm,
and now they're an old person, and all of a sudden the Crusades begin. It's like, oh my
mm,
God. You had a normal life the
mm,
whole time, and now everything goes to hell.
mm,
And at the same time, there could be a child who's growing up right when the Crusades end. And then
mm,
they grow up old and they get older, right? Everything seems to be normal. And then the
mm,
Mongol invasions begin. It's like, oh my God, this is crazy. So
subhanallah.
that whole thing about the world just always being crazy, but maybe we
Mm,
don't see it that way. It's like, yeah, a lot can change in just a few years. 5 years ago, there are some things that if you say them now, it'd be considered a crazy conspiracy theory. But now
mm,
it's like common knowledge. Everybody knows it, even if it
mm.
isn't printed in a textbook. Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah, subhanallah, subhanallah. It, it's it's beautiful in that, like, people's movements and pushback have elevated the amount of what I would say, like, the minimum line is allowed in popular discourse, right? Like, alhamdulillah, it's like great to see that increase. On the point of conspiracies, it's really interesting to me because it's like I actually find sometimes it can be harmful for certain conspiracies to be discussed. And what do I mean by that? Sometimes there are uh, like we'll get caught up on discussing who killed who, what led to what, who did this, who did that, when in reality, the actors and players we're discussing have already given us all the evidence in the world of other oppression they're committing constantly, that I feel like it almost can become a distraction to discuss certain items.
Yeah.
Someone the other day was talking to me, he's like, okay, whether or not the government did 9/11, okay, whatever way you go, the impacts of what America did to millions of people using 9/11 as justification, and to this day, what they're doing, like that's the reality that exists in the US, yeah, with the military industrial complex. Like we have so much to work on there. Us knowing whether or not Bush did 9/11, that should not impact that's not gonna impact the amount of work we're actually doing and the change systems of power here. Like we already have enough evidence of the evils and the destruction and the harm, you know? And so when these things come up, and I used to be obsessed with these things. But now I tell myself to put it on my Jannah list. I have a running, ongoing, I call it a Jannah list, which I don't write down because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I don't need to write it down for Allah to know it, obviously. So anytime I have like a fun fact thing I want to know, like I really want to know who killed Malcolm X, Allah yarhamu. I mean, all grand highest level of Jannah. I mean, I really want to know who killed JFK. You brought that up earlier. I really want to know how the 9/11 happened. I really want to know a million things. I also want to know how many basketball points I've scored in my life if I put every single pickup game together, you know? But it's like, there's not material impact on the type of work we're doing. I feel like I tell someone, pray you, of course, like do what you need to do. Pray you can go to Jannah, inshallah, and that Allah grants you His mercy, and then have these on the list.
Excellent point. And my dad was actually telling me that recently. He's
Huh.
like, conspiracies are a great distraction. Like, let's
Mm.
just say there's 100 people, and now you got 30 of them that are super focused on UFOs and aliens. Well, now
Mm.
the people in charge, whoever they are, they don't need to worry about those 30. Let's
Mm.
focus on these 70. How do we get these 70 distracted? And there's different
Mm.
ways to get them distracted. Sports might be one of them, entertainment.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mm.
I definitely hear you there. I had a friend also, you might know him, but years ago he told me, he was like, he pulled me to the side because I used to be really into conspiracy theories as well. And he's like, you know
Mm.
what, man? I really like conspiracy theories as well, but here's the thing. Like, what are you going to get out of that for talking about that? Nothing.
Mm.
It's just people are going to perceive you differently. So you
Mm.
can have that interest or whatever, but there's no real benefit to that. You just keep digging deeper and deeper into a hole. And he was
Mm.
right. It is just a distraction.
Yeah, subhanallah. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, US history is a conspiracy. You know what I mean?
You
Like
know,
the
one of
fact
my
that,
favorite stories, by the way, I don't want to cut
yeah,
you off. One of my
no, yeah,
favorite
no.
stories is the way Americans want, the way we want our independence. There was this treaty or this truce where the British and the Americans, they're not going to fight on Christmas Eve. And George
Hmm.
Washington, he led his men on Christmas Eve at night. And that's how we won the revolution. Crazy, right?
Ah, dude, that's funny. All these mushy gushy, like even like the story of Thanksgiving and us having some like, uh, great relationship with the natives and this and shared and broke bread together, you know? Like these, they're very concerning. And I went on YouTube and I typed in Thanksgiving kids to see what deranged kids videos are out there. Indoctrinating, yeah, I'm going to use that word because we like to use it only for other countries. Indoctrinating children in the US with a very particular idea of how the US history kind of evolved. It's very, very disturbing the more we break it down. Like again, like we don't want to talk about it in schools that like it was part of our science curriculum, public education to say these people are genetically inferior than these people, and here is the evidence, and you learn that and you grow up. So of course you're building generations of people who are going to be um, well equipped to support a racialized system of dominating certain people in this country, subhanAllah.
Yeah. Were you taught that when you were young?
Which part?
The genetic differences, so this is more superior and that is more inferior.
So this is what this was called the eugenics movement. It's like in the early
Yeah,
1900s.
but I'm saying you weren't taught that, right? I remember that was in the
Oh,
past, but you weren't
oh,
taught that.
yeah. No, no. Although there are writers these days who still try and point to this stuff, like David Horowitz, who wrote a book about like I think called like the bell curve or something, where he's talking about how like yeah, just certain races just tend to perform better in these categories, blah blah blah. Yeah, yeah. But if you Google him, don't worry. UH did a protest against him when he tried coming in 2017.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, last time you were here, you said so many great things, but my most favorite thing, and the one that always sticks with me in the back of my head,
Hmm.
I'll be driving and I'll have the thought.
Hmm.
It's, well, you said, there's going to be times in your life where there's going to be different people, and they might not treat you the way that you want to be treated. But
Hmm.
it's on you now. Are you going to mirror that energy, or
Hmm.
are you going to deal with them the right, proper way that it is? And
Hmm.
I just want to say thank you for that, man, because as I said, that's always in the back of my head, and I think about that. And I think the past year, especially maybe past two, I've realized taking things personally is a part of growing up,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's just a part of the journey. It is not a destination.
SubhanAllah. I feel like you said it better than I did, man. MashaAllah. That was very well framed and packaged. Um, yeah, man. And it's an ongoing struggle, man. It's an ongoing struggle,
It
subhanAllah.
is.
I
It
still feel that
absolutely
as
is.
well in like different situations. And it's an ongoing test. To me, the biggest concept behind it is like, what's our starting point? In that situation, the question is our starting point ourselves and our own morals and principles and guidelines? Or is our starting point what someone just said to us, right? In other situations, or how someone treated us. Other situations, what's been on my mind a lot lately, recently, is what's our starting point? An intrinsic definition of success in this life based on morals, principles, and so on, or the definition of success that's been given to us by society around us. The job, the kids, the stability, the go to the masjid and pray, all these different things. As being some like bubble. Just take care of yourself and your family and have a good income and blah blah blah, and that's success. And that's like a friction that I've been reflecting a lot on recently because how we define success I think defines us. Like if you ask yourself, who am I? Okay, how do I define success? That will summarize who I am. Um, and so it's like when people say, "Oh, I came to this country to give my kids a better world," what they really mean is a better material world. And if we let that dominate our own definition of success, so on the back of our minds, being a janitor is a loser position. Being a low income is a loser position. Being having not having a home with a loser position, even though working at certain restaurants, loser position. When in reality, it's like actually the number one measurement of success is submission to God. And if you're able to do that in whatever situation you're in, which includes establishing justice, then you are actually the successful one. But the people around you may not know, and that's a tough pill to swallow. And it's tough, even myself, I'm trying to unlearn a lot of that. In terms of, okay, like what does success look like? And it comes up in that example too, like you mentioned, with treating individuals. Success to me, mirroring what the other person does or says, so that I can feel like, okay, like my personal justice is met, that he treated me bad, so I treated him bad, and now justice has been fulfilled. Or is my definition of justice a lot deeper, where it's like actually, justice is I was able to not mirror your energy, and I submitted to only God, and my submission is my liberation.
Yeah. You know, when I reflect on that past year, especially year and a
Mm.
half, I think in my personal experience, the way that I was seeing the world, I think a decent bit of it had something to do with reading Robert Greene. And
Hmm.
nothing personal against Robert Greene. I've learned so much from, what he's written. But there comes like I guess a natural pessimism from taking in that information. And that information for people who aren't familiar, to just summarize it, and this isn't justify it, to summarize it,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like dog eats dog world. And you got to be
Mm.
careful how you deal with people, how you interact with people. Um,
Mm.
if someone does you dirty, don't be better, be lower. So that
Mm.
sends a message. And it
Mm.
works. Let me tell you, it actually works, which is the craziest thing that I've realized. It
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
But if you spend enough time in that echo chamber of being that supervillain,
Mm.
um, it really tears you up inside. And that's what I felt. I
Mm.
was like, oh my God. Like, I'm not saying I was like this evil person,
Sure.
but just the way that I would deal with people sort of in a cold fashion, it was
Mm.
it didn't feel good at all. It felt bad
Mm.
on the inside. And I
Mm.
realized, there's a reason Islam has that ideal of being kind, of being better. Last time on the podcast, you also mentioned the Prophet, peace be upon him, and how the way people dealt with him, it's crazier than what any of us will have. But
Mm.
he still showed them good character. And that's not easy at
Mm.
all. But I can see
Mm.
why Islam champions good character, because it's
Mm.
not only good for society, but it's also good for you. And
Mm.
yeah, that's
Mm.
that's just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, it's a beautiful reflection. It's like in our capacity of destroying others or attempting to destroy others, and destroy can might sound dramatic, but even in these like, small situations, we're destroying our own soul. And that's like, not always easy for people to catch because, like you said, materially in front of you, you had a benefit that came out of it. Like you said, it works. These strategies work to go lower, but in reality,
That's the craziest
internally,
thing.
it's the reverse. Yeah, subhanAllah.
That
Mm.
that is really the craziest thing, man. That there's like
Mm.
actual power in being that way. It's
Mm.
insane. And I can see the advantage of it. And so you can put two and two together and see,
Mhm.
okay, why do people act with the dog eats dog mentality? Like I can
Mm.
see that. And by the way, I don't think Robert Greene wrote any of his books with the intention of making a
Mm.
person pessimistic or,
Right.
a supervillain.
Mhm.
But again, there's an advantage to that. It's like the game is fixed. These are the rules. Now you decide if you want to play or not. It's crazy,
Mm.
man. But let me ask you, I just told you right now, there is an advantage. There is power in
Mm.
acting kind of mean or lower.
Mm. Mm.
Is there an advantage in your experience of acting higher, of acting better? Is there power
Mm.
to it?
You know what? I think you can extrapolate this exact scenario to what we're seeing on the ground in Palestine as we speak. You have a group of people, a group of countries that have built their power off being lower, off of bombing and destroying and X and Y and Z and putting countries in debt to service them and all these things, right? And then you have a group of people on the ground who, in the material world, it looks like those people's tactics are winning. But then these people who don't have the material power in front of them, who are going higher, and what does higher in this scenario mean? Higher means we're going to continue to fight for XYZ justice. We're not going to give in. How many people on the ground in Palestine are being offered thousands of dollars, safety for their families, XYZ, by the occupying army and telling them, hey, just give us some info and we'll give you this and we'll protect your family. Hey, just make sure to go mess up this, go be an infiltrator in this group and mess with them and this. How many offers are coming to them a day, right? And they're saying, no, we're going to stick with our principles. We're not going to go lower, even if it gives us a material benefit. And we are okay with the material impact being uh, uh, death or oppression or so on and so forth because we don't want to go lower, we want to go higher. And what are we seeing as the impact? The impact is not just for the individual's benefit deep down in their hearts, um, between them and their Lord, that there's a certain level of, a better relationship. But the impact becomes collective. And I really mean that, as in, like, how is it that then materially, with all the millions of dollars and weapons poured in, that the world somehow is now in a better position, like you referenced earlier, in terms of talking about Palestine, supporting Palestine than it was beforehand. And that idea, that concept, to me is like when I myself am a better person, there will be a better impact, but I just have to be okay that even when I'm higher in certain situations, and we're gonna hear stories that get elevated, like saying, there was this time where, I could have gone lower, I decided to go higher, and it paid off for me. It paid off for me. I still became rich doing a job that I never would have thought, and Allah just put it in my lap, and it all worked out for me. Like God showed me a way because I was a good person at this point in my life. This trajectory, by the way, is what wins high school short film. So if any high schoolers are watching this and you enter your Muslim interscholastic tournament, put in a short film where a character is put in a situation where they have to make a good or bad decision, they make a good one, and then it pays out for them. That wins every short film competition. But here's my challenge. Even though there are situations and examples where that happens and you go higher, you go better, and have a better material impact, we have to be okay with there not being a better material scenario for us. And that's a hard, hard pill to swallow. And that's what they're swallowing on the ground in Palestine. It's like we have to be okay with, like, I may never see the fruits in this world. Like I might actually be suffering in the streets and so on and so forth. Of course, I'll pray that God grants me the contentment, but I have to be okay with that reality of having a tougher material life and never seeing the hidden wisdom, never seeing the reasoning of God behind me being in a tough situation after making a good decision according to His principles He laid out for us, right? And that is like the toughest you know, like I think a sheikh, he said a few weeks back, like, not everyone will have the khidr in their journey. Khidr being the person who showed
That's a
Moses,
great one.
peace be upon him, right? The wisdom
Yeah.
behind all the different actions he did. Like, wait, why did you kill this child? Why did you poke a hole in this boat? So on and so forth. And telling them, oh, it's because of this, because of this. And Moses, peace be upon him, was able to see the hidden fruits and wisdom. We may never ever have a khidr in our life. And we have
Yes.
to be fine with that we may never see it. And it's tough. It's tough. It's not easy. But then again, isn't Prophet peace upon him, didn't he say that this world is a prisoner for the believers? And so we have to, a prison for the believers. We have to embrace this prison and be ready for the challenges that it has.
One of my all-time favorite poems I've written, there's a line in there where it says, "It is becoming of a man to become accepting of the lack of closure." And what
Mm,
you're saying right now is
mm,
that's what it is. You have to be okay with understanding that you might not see the hidden wisdom. You might
mm,
not have a hither in your journey.
mm.
It's a very good point, man. I love how you connected that.
You summarized it powerfully, man. I need you to
Yeah.
send me that sentence after, man.
Yeah, no, for sure, bro.
Hmm.
Yeah, man, that it's I love that whole little session we had right there. That was great. That was
Hmm.
great.
Hey man, you opened the door, man. You opened the door. You set it up, man. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But there's this connection between the individual and the collective that I think that people lack in general, in terms of, when we free ourselves, that's how we become stronger to free the collective and the society as a whole. That's what Islam gives us, is a very direct line between individual liberation and collective liberation.
What
Uh,
is individual liberation?
mm, 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 mm. Individual liberation is when you become a slave to God. Freedom through slavery. Hmm? As opposed to a slave to uh, our own desires and our own preferences, and what people say, follow your heart. We hear that a lot. That's not our God. Hmm? Sometimes our heart is going to be saying to do something that goes against what God has decreed or what God has ordered for us to do. And now we're not free. We're not truly free. And
Man,
so when I'm saying that, oh, it would feel nice to go again to join this company and expropriate resources and make a lot of money, or to do XYZ to this person because they did me dirty, or to go and take over this piece of land and establish a country, like it all connects directly. And when we're able to say no, like I have certain feelings towards this person, this woman or man, so I'm gonna go make a move. And I have good intention. I'm not gonna play them. I just want to make a move. But in the back of my head, I know that God has put out a path where it's not the way to go. There's a better way to go about this with a third party involved or XYZ. Like it's these moments where like we are really challenged internally. And we're worshiping gods that is a different idea than just worshiping multiple gods as we've learned in school, where okay, the Hindus have multiple gods, or the Hindus, sorry, multiple gods, and so on and so forth, or or worshiping graves. Like these are common examples we hear about what it means to not worship one God. But in reality, ourselves and our desires, that's like the common, I feel like, struggle we have, especially in the US, where you're told to buy and your self-worth is tied to your consumption, how much I can buy, how much value I provide to this society. That's what I'm chasing. So therefore, I'm going to get a house through this manner, which is not Islamically permissible, and enter getting interest. I'm going to make money through this manner. I'm going to invest my money in these funds, which are involved with Microsoft and XYZ, but I don't care, even though those are explicitly oppressive companies. I'm going to make money through that. That is a form of us not truly being free. Um, and so when we get to the point where we're able to say, yeah, I didn't consume this food or drink, or I didn't buy these items, or I didn't decide to make my wealth through this means, because I'm a slave to God, I know what God has shown me to do in this world, then now I'm truly free. Now I'm truly free. And when I'm truly free as an individual, now I can be a bit more serious when I say, "Oh, I wish I was there on the ground in Palestine because I would love to go and fight and support my brothers and sisters." And I'm like, "Really? You're saying that? But the other day you made a joke to me that you can't resist yourself from drinking a Coca-Cola bottle because you love Coke, even though you know it's a boycott target." It's like, are we really free? Like, are we really free based off of what we've become in this hyper consumerist society that tells you to follow, free yourself, be in your individual bubble, follow your heart, and freedom of the soul means doing whatever you want, and that's freedom. But our definition of freedom as Muslims is everything we do is tied to submission to God, as opposed to what the West has told us we can do, and just doing whatever we please.
yeah. I've heard many times desires being gods. Don't take desires for
Mm,
gods. But I love how you said your heart is not a god. And
mm,
I wonder if there's any mythologies in the world where they have heart gods. I would think about that.
interesting.
That's an interesting concept.
Ah,
But no, great points that you bring up. And I want to ask you, have you always been this way? Have you
hmm,
always been a faithful person? Or have
hmm.
there been times in your life where you were a seasonal believer?
Mm. That's deep. Um, I'm lucky that I've always had an attachment and a want, um, but it's fluctuated over the years.
As
It's
it
definitely
does.
fluctuated. What do you say?
As it does, yeah.
As it does, right? And then the outcome, the product has been different, both in how I think and in how I act. Um, the funny story from middle school, people say, I don't know if you think this is true or not. Have you ever heard of people say like there'll always be this time in your young adolescence, probably around like while you're going through puberty, where you just like have this really, really strong urge to like seek God and be like super quote unquote religious. Have you heard of this concept or not really?
I have not actually. No.
Okay, some people say that. I don't know how true it is, but I had an instance where like in middle school, I don't know, I just started getting really like curious about religion and watching certain YouTube videos and so on. And I remember I would like learn things, but without the proper framing. So I was like learning that, okay, for example, the Day of Judgment is on a Friday. So I'm like, oh my God, it's on a Friday. It could be any Friday now. I didn't learn about the signs, the Day of Judgment, none of that. So I was like, okay, it could be any Friday now. Oh my God. I need to like, return to God and to return to Him and so on and so forth. And so I was like, all right. And then I attended some lectures at a few mosques that like really got me thinking. I'm like, oh my God, like I have to go deeper than just playing basketball at the mosque. I need to become a better Muslim. So what did I do? I told all the girls at school on the first day of eighth grade, guys, I'm no longer hugging y'all. Because saying hi was just a hug back then. So I was like, okay, I'm no longer hugging any of y'all. They're like, what? Like, Momo, are you kidding me? They come, and I'm like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I can't, I can't. I didn't even have the courage to say it's because for my religion. I just said, no, I just can't. And that was that. Like, this is my hard line stance that I took. That was like what it looked like based off the knowledge I had. So there was this idea of like wanting to be committed to a broader to an idea of like being dedicated to something. And then when it came to my high school days, it was this journey of like I just want to be I want to follow a rebellious spirit, and my quote unquote religion at that point was our high school beef against like a rival high school in the district. And so I was leading school chants and so on and so forth, different football games and leading all these actions. And then to college, uh, it was like this transformation into the bigger picture, the bigger thing I want to be a part of now is actually a political movement tied to my Islam. And so instead of chanting out at football games, it was chanting out at politicians. And so it was like this trajectory where like I think always deep down I wanted to be a part of something bigger. And I would kind of fluctuate in terms of what that is. But the journey and kind of the reflections were always there. And one thing that came to mind that I've been like wanting to improve on is that I remember on my way to Gaza, we had a bunch of obstacles come up. Lost our luggage, flights got delayed, multiple stops, all these different things. But I was so excited to see Palestine for the first time, outside of when I was like 6 months old. I was so excited to see it for the first time that I had a smile on my face and it was genuine. Like like nothing could deter me. I was just so happy and so excited to go see Palestine. And I reflect on that experience. I'm like, you know what? Like I need to have that mentality in terms of life itself and me trying to seek meeting God in heaven one day. Like that needs to be my mentality. I can't get brushed up by inconveniences in life and times where things are down. I let it put me in a way worse mood than it should. Like I should have that conviction that I'm like, oh my God, like heaven's real, God is real, and and like I'm excited for it, and like anything that comes my way, I'm ready to deal with it. That's the journey like lately that I've been reflecting on. Like I need to get to that stage. And God granted me a version of it in that mini that mini experiment with on my way to Palestine. But I have yet to really dive into that and have that in terms of, life itself.
Yeah. I didn't ask you this, but how does it feel when you reflect that you were actually in Gaza?
Mm,
You went into homes. I imagine you went into mosques and stores and stuff,
right.
and they're just gone, destroyed.
Mm. Yeah, subhanallah. I early on, many of the pictures and videos that were coming out, I could recognize the spots. Oh, we
Wow.
visited here, we visited there. And my grandpa put it well. I was visiting him after he left, and now he's in Jordan. I was visiting him, and he was reflecting. He's looking at the TV, and he's like, and he used to be the head of the health ministry of Gaza and all of Palestine, actually, back in the 90s and early 2000s. So, what his reflection was, he was like, all these hospitals that spent us decades, or sorry, years and years of raising money, asking, meeting with countries to ask them to donate so we can build these hospitals, build these institutions. He said, years of work and within minutes it was all bombed to the ground. And I was like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. That like, because I would just say, okay, like a destroyed masjid, destroyed hospital, destroyed house, okay, like that hurts, of course. But I'm like, wait, like there are people who spent their lives to build these things, these institutions. And so there's like a whole, like another layer to this of like, and this is of course Israel's like this is one of their goals is like everything that you took the time to grow and build, sustain your community and people, we want to destroy it. And that really, really hit me, and that stuck with me. And that stuck with me. It made me think about all the destroyed kind of infrastructure that I'm seeing now, a lot differently.
Man, that was a great observation from your grandfather, and it made me think of, it could take 5 years to build a reputation, but just five
Mm,
minutes to destroy it, or something like that. But it's the
mm,
inverse. It's the
mm,
inverse. And yeah, no, that's a great point. Before we end off, man, I wanted to talk to you about something I was referring to in the beginning of the episode, which is like the zeitgeist and how it feels like just the mood of the world has just been so gray for the past couple of years.
mm,
I sometimes find myself in a trap where I'm trying so hard to get in touch with the past again, try to
mm,
like bring that back, but
mm,
it's a trap. It's a trap. Have you
mm,
had experiences like that in your life where you're chasing the past too hard and you just have to let go?
mm, mm, mm. I'd say, man, every day almost, man. Every day almost. Because it's like, whether it's something as simple as the joy I used to get while playing basketball, like chasing that when I play these days, and having to tell myself, hey, like, this is just the new part of your life, the new part of your self journey. That basketball is not going to bring you that same joy anymore. Like, that's it. The way I'll chase it when you ever hang out with a group of my friends, and I'm like, excited and trying to tell myself this will be like back in the day when we used to go out during college or something before and like you just kind of hang out and you can laugh and talk about things and it's like no, it's going to be limited, maybe for 5 minutes here or there. I'll feel like it was back then, but like no, it's not the same. Or the way even with family members where I'm thinking back to the days where maybe we used to hang out more, talk more, and it's like like that's just not existent now, and you have to be okay with that. And what I've realized is that like rather than me trying to chase a feeling, I have to just come to terms with it, um, and take it as and not frame it as a negative as much as I do, and view it as like, okay, a new positive pivot in life. Like there's something better to this that I just don't. I'm not able to put my finger to. Before October 7, actually around the time that we spoke and met in person, my mind was in probably the healthiest spot it had ever been in terms of I was in a place where uh, everything around me I was in a very creative bubble. I'll say that. I was writing new poems left and right, and I was really enjoying it. Everything felt really natural and spontaneous and real. And I had like five, six, seven, eight poems I was like writing out, and I'd almost finished. And I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing." I'm writing about concepts like how a poem called "Love is the Default," which is about how when I went to Gaza, I felt a certain love from people who I'd never met before, and I was like, "Wait, how does that make sense?" I was like, "I don't know, break it down for myself." I was writing about how like all different societal reflections I had, and after October 7th, that part of my brain died. Like that was it. No more natural reflections, none of that. Like, it just didn't exist, and nor did I even feel like I wanted that anymore. Uh, some days I'll feel guilty. I'm like, man, I wish I could just go back to that. Um, back that state of mind where I'm just naturally thinking and creating and like this artistic realm that I feel like my heart is the most at peace with. But now I'm like, no, like in reality, what I'm chasing is a bubble that maybe wasn't actually good for me to begin with. That like there are actually better uses of my time, better uses of my mental energy, my emotional energy that need to be poured into things now, in terms of establishing justice and so on and so forth. And I should just be lucky and grateful that God has pushed me into this new avenue, while others may never get the chance to get pushed into this avenue, and they're going to live their whole lives, maybe partaking in things that are not the best use of their time. And I'm not saying the things I mentioned were like bad uses, but like you know what I mean. There are more meaningful and community-oriented items I can be doing. Um, and like I said, to start off, where it's like I keep reminding myself that there are so many people who this wasn't a veil piercing moment for, because their whole life was feeling the piercing itself. Their whole life was, oh, my sister was taken by ICE 10, 15 years ago. Oh, my son was thrown into prison at a young age. Oh, my father was murdered by the police. Oh, my mother was tortured by the military. Oh, like people's bubbles never existed depending on their story. The person has been there and they've lived their whole life not being interested in any of the things that I just mentioned before about the personal activities I had, because their whole life is dedicated to a struggle that they've been dealt with personally and that they've dedicated their lives to as a result of that. Right? Our political prisoners, Brother Shukri Abu Bakr, his daughter, there's a lot of good posts about this, Trinda Abu Bakr, about how like for her, like she's looking at all this talk about prisoners now. She's like, I love this, but like we've had one in prison for almost 2 decades now, and it's like your bubble may have just been pierced for the first time, but don't forget about those who have been victims of oppression right now, and that you need to connect the current piercing to the historical a line of oppression that has
Yeah.
existed. And so
You
it's
know,
just kind
by the way,
of
there's one point I wanted to make, which
yeah.
was I didn't mention this before, but there's no doubt about it. You know, October 7th, that did change the world.
Mm,
But I mean, even outside
mm,
of that piercing the veil, you know, there
mm,
just seems to be this grayness over the
mm,
whole world. And it's like in
mm,
almost everything. But what I'm trying to figure out is that just me seeing it that way? Or do other people also see it that way?
mm. It's almost like we feel like there's a decline, like there's like a collective decline. And I think we see that even in like stats, right, that have been released about like mental illnesses growing at a speed we've never seen before, suicide rates increasing at a speed we've never seen before. Like there are real like material impacts that are coming out of this. And maybe that's the more extreme level, but like you said, just the average person, there's like a normal, like, as a general gray. I think that's real. I think that's true. And I honestly attribute it to the lack of an attachment to something beyond this material world. Like honestly, I think when we're pushed into these individual bubbles and just buy, and work, and just and go to your 2 week vacation,
Yeah.
get your impulse, and come back. Like I think the routine,
Yes.
it's a self-destructive cycle. The US created this kind of system, and now it's starting to have its effects on people because over time you're like I think everyone feels empty in some form or fashion. We have to be real. Like all of us
Yeah.
do, and no one really wants to admit it. There are people who find the contentment and peace in their religion, and I think me and you both believe that's like the ultimate like way to get that and in our submission to God. But like most of us, yeah, like there's an emptiness there, and no one talks about it, I feel like.
Yeah. The example I'm about to share is so superficial, but I feel like it kind of captures a little bit of what I'm referring to.
Hmm.
I don't know where this business stands in the grand scheme of things,
Hmm.
but when you were a kid and you walked into a Best Buy, it was
Hmm.
exciting. Like, oh
Hmm.
my God. Now you walk in, it's like a ghost town in there. There's
Hmm.
nothing impressive about it whatsoever. And that's just
Hmm.
one tiny, small, basic, superficial example. But there's
Hmm.
so many things like that in
Hmm.
different spheres of life where it's like, oh my God, like what's going on everywhere? And I'm not trying to be pessimistic again. I'm trying to escape that. But yeah, I wonder, am I the only one to see things that way? Or maybe this
Mm.
is just part of growing up. The world is always changing, is what it is.
Do you ever feel it with restaurants or no? Like going to eat.
You know, my favorite restaurant, my favorite Pakistani restaurant,
Mm.
the chef that was there for like a decade, he's gone. So the
Oh,
taste has changed. I have
so
felt
you
it.
actually,
I have felt it.
yeah. I mean, for me, like growing up, eating out as a family wasn't that frequent. I mean, like once every few weeks or something. So it was like a big deal. I get so excited if my mom was bringing home like Wendy's, or if we're going out to actually sit down in a restaurant like Olive Garden. It was a big deal to me. But now at this age, where it's like, okay, I've been blessed with enough wealth for it, and then I'm just gonna go and eat during my lunch break, and then come back to work, and it's like, it's not the same rush, obviously, to like eat out. Even as a family, it's not the same rush. Um, and I miss that rush, as we all do, because the rush is like it's like a positive feeling to an extent. And I miss it. And like you said, maybe it's just like a form of how we grow up, and that like things that were huge to us growing up now are like not the same. Or maybe there's like an actual community. Maybe it's part of like the digital realm taking over our lives and people not going out as much. Like even just in neighborhoods, like you won't see people playing in the streets as much. I went to the park a few weeks ago just to get some time to myself and to write a bit, and like I didn't see many people at that park on a Friday afternoon. Like I remember seeing growing up, and it was just very odd to me. I'm like, are we becoming more secluded? Did Corona have an impact? Is it
Yeah.
are we all just becoming like, mini zombies? I don't know.
I enjoy doing door dashes. I enjoy doing that. And you know what's so fascinating about it?
Huh.
The the distances that people order from. It's like I went to a Sonic. I picked up a meal for this lady who lived in an apartment complex right behind it. Isn't that crazy? There's
Uh,
so many people like that. It's like, man, laziness has
uh,
really encompassed the society.
like hyper convenience,
Yeah,
ultra, and then it takes away from actual human interaction.
yeah.
Uh,
And I mean, I'm not blaming those people. You know, it's
of
fine if
course,
you want
of
to do
course.
that. You know, I'm
Yeah,
sure I'm a part of that in some
of
sense.
course.
But
All of us, all of us.
yeah, I don't know. That's just something I've been thinking about, and I think speaking to you right now is particularly interesting for so many reasons. But this one in particular, you were like one of the last few guests I had on before October 7th. In fact, Malik, the blonde, he was the last guest. I talked to him like the night before all this happened. And then his episode
Ah,
released the morning of. And he was telling me, dude, you don't understand. Like, things are going to change. I specifically remember
ah,
him telling me that. He's like, things have just changed. And I didn't
ah.
get it in the moment because, you know, there's
Yeah,
always skirmishes going on in the Holy Land.
sure. Yeah.
He was right. Like, a lot has changed since then.
Mm. No, absolutely, man. I remember that morning, I had a class at one of the Islamic seminaries in Houston, and I woke up. First, I had a dream that night, actually, that was quite literally about Palestine. And I woke up to some text on my phone. I'm like, what happened? I go to my living room. I wore what I needed to wear to go to class. I went to my living room to say bye to my parents. I see them watching Al Jazeera, and it's showing, and it's like a very kind of victorious feeling of like, oh shoot, they broke through, this, that attack was launched. I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. I ran back to my room, changed into a Palestine shirt because people say you wear your heart on your sleeve, and I wanted to actually like do that as close as I could. I wanted to wear it and wear it to my class. I get to my class within 4 hours. We get a text in a WhatsApp chat that one of my cousins, their tower, I think it was called the Al Aqsa Tower. It was actually one of the first buildings that Israel bombed in Gaza in response to operation. Literally that same day, October 7th itself, they bombed it down, and they had to flee and so on. And then the mood started shifting. And then the next day, another cousin's house was bombed. And the next day, my grandparents' house was bombed. And during those same days, I'm like celebrating that got the news that I passed my bar exam with my family. And so I'm feeling all these emotions, and I'm like, we broke through. Oh shoot, my family's house got bombed. Oh, I passed my bar exam. Oh, but like now it's like getting worse and worse. And oh, we're not hearing from my family and this and this. And it was a lot, and I'm like, shoot. And then that's not to mention like you said, the implications for the world as a whole and what we're seeing around us, and all these institutions releasing statements and this and that, and the president coming out and all these different things. It's like, okay. And then within like a week, it was cool that Malik had that foresight to point it out. But I feel like, I guess a lot of us, it took like a week or two where it's like, okay, yeah, it's nothing's ever gonna be the same.
Yeah. And quite literally, I remember I didn't think like too much of it. I was like, oh, well, I hear this stuff like it happens every couple of
Right.
years, something crazy happens.
Mm-hmm.
But damn, did it really change things?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still baffled to this day by how much the tide has turned. I mean, worldwide. And we talked about conspiracy theories earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
there's an interesting one I want to pass by you.
Mm-hmm.
There's this Chinese Canadian professor. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't, but he says that what's going on in the Holy Land is a ritual child sacrifice, and it's
Mm-hmm.
purposely being shown to the world. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, how evil works. There's something about it. And I thought his perspective was very interesting because I always remember like telling my dad, they can't be this stupid. Like they know that people are seeing this. They know that people know
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. Like they can't be this stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And what that professor was saying, I mean, it really hit me. And he said like they want people to know. They want people to see what's
Mm-hmm.
going on here. And the way he tied the concept of sacrifice throughout history and civilizations, I mean, it's pretty horrifying actually. It's crazy.
That's fascinating. I've had the video sent to me before. I haven't done a deep dive into it though
The
myself.
deep dive is crazy.
Yeah,
That whole lesson is
yeah.
insane.
I'll check it out then. I'll check it out. It's fascinating. This concept about like they're okay with us seeing, or they want us to see around these lines, right? I was talking to someone the other day about how like our challenge now is no longer about awareness, it's about action. And so what does that mean for us? It means like they try to censor Facebook, Instagram, so on. They're still censoring, but they know it's not actually going to like make much of a difference now. Like they've kind of given up. And many of these Zionist leaders have straight up said like, yeah, we lost Gen Z, we lost like there's no recovering from this in terms of awareness, right? But the latest challenge we're going to see now, I think, is what I call co-optation. Co-optation being where uh, a certain agenda is being pushed for a free Palestine, and a party is going to come and co-opt it and say, okay, yeah, we support y'all, and here's what the solution looks like to kind of drive the movement away. Uh, I'm sure you remember the George Floyd moment from 2020. Okay, what did we see happen? There were a lot of protests and resistance at a very strong level all over the nation, and you were seeing a lot of educational programming questioning where did police come from? Why do they exist? This and this. Maybe they are rotten at the core. Maybe it's not about just a few bad officers, right? All this like deep, intrinsic, like questioning that like really questions the core identity in a lot of ways of the US itself. And what happened? We saw corporations come in, the government come in and say, "You're right, we support y'all with this. Let's donate to black-owned businesses. Let's have Nike run a few ads. Let's do this." You had NBA players about to go on a historic strike where they would literally not play, which have huge ramifications. The NBA is no like small league at all by any means. And what happened? Barack Obama calls them and says, "Hey guys, I think this is a bad idea. Maybe do this instead, so you can get more actionable items done, and blah blah blah. We'll do some donations to these organizations, all this stuff." And all of a sudden, they were able to again, the elites and government came in, co-opted a movement. Why? To put a cap to it, to put a ceiling on it, so that it could not achieve what it wants to. And right now, and to come in the next few years, I think we're going to see a very similar challenge where it's, oh, recognize the state of Palestine, make this your ceiling. When in reality, you look at a map, recognize what? Gaza's been destroyed for the most part, the West Bank, and controlled by who? And it's like a very silly predicament, you know? And we're going to see Palestinian influencers being propped up as being our heroes. That because they're spreading awareness, but there's no real discussion about action. How does this affect the U.S.? what do we actually do to stop Zionism? That's it. They want to think about individuals and awareness as opposed to actual, systems. And I told a friend, don't be surprised if we see a Nike Kofia hijab released in the next 5, 6 years, and some big mainstream corporations and movies coming out about XYZ because the master wants to tell the servant how to resist and put a ceiling. That's kind of how I view it, tying all the way back to the slaves who were told only specific verses in the Bible.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. It's an interesting time to live in, man.
Mm,
That's all I can say, really. But yeah,
100%, man. And it's just up on us, you know? It's a challenge on us. It's interesting. And then it's a challenge and responsibility and a duty that each of us carry in our minds and our hearts in terms of, what our impact is going to be. Because whether it's Palestine or other movements for oppressed people, we know God's promises are true objectively and they will be free. And we pray that God uses us as opposed to replacing us. Um, with others who will do the work. We want to have the honor to be a part of these freedom struggles. And if we don't, if we fall short, we'll be held accountable for that, and God will replace us with people who will get the job done.
yeah. There's this YouTuber who went to Israel. And he was talking to this one dude, and this one dude said, "When you're Jewish, you're the main character, and the plot of your life is the Messiah." And I thought that was
Hmm.
a very interesting thing because,
Hmm.
the whole idea of Jewish people coming to the Holy Land is to summon the Messiah. There's
Hmm.
an interesting thing in history that I'm not sure too many people know about, but it's back in the 1600s, if I'm not mistaken. There was a guy named Shabtai Tzvi.
Hmm.
And again, if I'm remembering the story correctly, he claimed to be the Messiah. And so
Hmm.
all the Jews from all over the world, they gathered.
Huh?
And it was like a big thing back in the day. The
Huh?
Ottomans hear about this. They bring him to the capital. They hear his spiel. And long story short, he becomes a Muslim. They tell him,
Huh?
like, convert or die. And so he
Huh?
became a Muslim. And this
Hmm.
broke the faith of the Jewish people in him. Like, man, this guy, he was a liar, deceiver this whole time. And
Hmm.
that dude is buried as a Muslim. It's crazy. And then the Jews, they all dispersed and they kind of went back. But
Huh?
I think that's a very interesting thing in history. It's like, damn, like that happened once upon a
Hmm.
time. Which, like, the whole purpose of them gathering is for the Messiah. And once upon a time, they tried that and it didn't work.
That's fascinating, man. I never heard of that story. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that whole undercurrent of this idea of like all the Jews coming back to this land, for the Messiah to come back. That's pushed very hard by evangelical Christians, which,
Isn't it interesting how that tide is also turning, though?
hmm,
Right?
I'm interested. I wonder if I haven't done as much research. I know that on the Christian side, there's certain churches who've come out, but I don't know on the evangelical specifically if there's been a shift in there or not. I wonder.
Mm.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I mean, there are like really interesting facts. Like, did you know that we have more Christian Zionists in the U.S. than we have Jewish people in the U.S.?
Oh my God. I did not
Not
know
than Jewish
that.
Zionists, than Jewish people. So it's like they're a force to be reckoned with that I think we don't give enough attention to.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. All the stuff is interesting.
Mm, 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 mm.
I was wondering, dude, do you have any other questions for me? Or
Mm. Um, Man, I'd love to ask you a question. Actually, I know you have some deep reflections, but I don't know. I mean, what would you say right now is like your what's been a deep life reflection that you've had lately in general?
um well, I can speak just for today. Uh my eyes are being opened more to the fact that there's a window for certain things. There's a time period. And there's some people in your life where things will happen, whatever, but you can still, keep in touch with them or whatever. And there's some people where it's like things happen, time happens, etc., etc. And there's really not an easy way to reconnect. So I've been thinking
Hmm.
about that a little. Where it's like, oh, you got to kind of, you really got to pay attention to the moment, you know? As I was saying, like, I got to be finished with trying to bring back the past. I got to really look at like
Hmm.
what's here right now and
Hmm.
just move with that because that past, it'll like keep you, you know how like when they tie Aladdin up to the chair and they throw him into the sea, it's like that. It's like you get
Ah,
stuck.
okay. That's deep, man. That's deep. That's deep. And then a hard part of that, I'm sure, is that realizing like some things mm, are just lost, and sometimes for no good reason or no bad reason, you just lose them. You lose contact, and there's just no getting back. It won't ever be the same again. Or losing love even for certain items and certain things in your life that you'll just never get back. And being okay to swallow that and just move forward and be like, all right, now it's a new window, like you were saying earlier.
Yeah. Rumi says something about that. I'm forgetting the exact quote, but he's like, just know that whatever's been lost to you by divine destiny, like there's something good in that for you. Just know
Hmm.
that. It's like, yeah, that's true.
No, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything you felt like you wanted to say we didn't get a chance to? Or something on your mind that you
Mm.
wanted to express?
No, I appreciate it, man. I feel like we covered a lot of ground. Um, Man, I would say like, yeah, there's a lot we touched on. Maybe just like if I'm negative and I complain a bit, I'm like, man, no more of this America first business. It's a fallacy. It's a fallacy. It's truly um I think it's a subconscious lie we're telling ourselves that there ever was an America first. And I am working on like writing about this as well to kind of put my thoughts down on paper. Because yeah, I think it's really, really important. And I think that if we want a sustainable solution uh, for the movement for a free Palestine and a movement for free people, both in the U.S. and across the world, whether it's indigenous struggles, the Black freedom struggle, in Kashmir, everything in between, we have to reckon with who the enemy is here and understand them better than they understand us. And I think that that's where a big shortcoming of ours is right now. So I think when we really dive into who the US is, what their functions are, and begin to build our own institutions here, as opposed to trying to rely on the government and rely on current institutions, then I think that, inshallah, we can be a part of the revival of not only a Muslim ummah around the world, but the revival for a more just and free society for all people around the world. God willing.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And one thing I wanted to add to that was that the way I see it is like America is just it's compromised. Like it's not America to blame. It's the systems that have been compromised. You know, like for example, like let's take a country like Turkey. It's like you think of Turkey like, oh, that nation is a metaphorical woman, or Egypt, that country's a metaphorical woman, and it
Hmm.
might be going through something like rough, but that's not the fault of the country. It's whoever is governing that country. And so I
Hmm.
feel similarly about America. It's like it's a damsel in distress, and we're Americans, and we need to save it in our own ways, even though that might be lofty thinking, but that's how I would see it in one way.
Hmm. 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 I'll share my writing with you, where my entire premise is, how does one define America? And that's where that'll kind of be. I think I'll leave it as like a cliffhanger. How does one define America? And based off how you define it, then it's like, does an America first exist or not? Mm-mm-mm.
Mm. Okay, I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'll share it to
And
you,
there's
man.
one other thing I wanted to say, man.
Yeah,
You
man.
got this great line you wrote. And what's a movement without sacrifice? An empty demand. Oh my God.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was great
Hmm.
writing.
Well, no, I don't know. I appreciate it, man. No, no. All praise to God. So that stood out to you. Okay.
That stood out to me, yeah.
Yeah, man. I mean, hmm. If we're being real and we're talking about these established power structures, the power structures that were able to, right after the operation of October 7, they were able to snap their fingers and have, statements put out by all these major institutions, money flowing in certain ways, people getting fired from their jobs, right? Like a very strong power structure, right? That has contributed to many people feeling in despair and so on and so forth. If we all agree this power structure exists, do we really think, do we really think we can have a movement that can dismantle this power structure for the greater good without some sacrifice on the way? Do we really think that the trillions of dollars invested in this infrastructure, that we're not going to have to lose something to get there? And we have to be real with ourselves because historically, there's never been a movement that was successful without sacrifice. We can go back to the most successful revolutionary movement in history, which was the one of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where it took his companions being martyred in battle, where it took the Prophet, peace be upon him himself, dealing with a lot of emotional and mental stress and physical abuse that he faced at the hands of his enemies and so on and so forth. And we go to modern times. Malcolm, I mean, may God grant him the highest level of heaven. One of my favorite modern, like more modern heroes to talk about. Like he was assassinated on the way for a movement for justice and freedom, and his contributions go far and beyond. To this day, people read his autobiography and convert to Islam just from reading that before they even get to the Quran itself. Sometimes, and it's like and then go back to the Algerian uprising and how it took millions of them to be killed in the field of battle before they got to their freedom from the French. And so it's like we have to be okay with the idea of sacrifice, and that's not comfortable for people because that means, like we were mentioning earlier, your material world is going to have consequences. It's not always your life being taken. It could be your wealth being affected. It could be your own children and your own your spouse being affected. And in that poem, everything I wrote before that are like examples of things that you would have to sacrifice on the way to a movement. And I mentioned things like your wealth. I mentioned things like your actual children, your actual spouse. And I don't mean sacrifice in terms of necessarily like, oh, they're going to get killed. It could be that, okay, you don't have time to spend with them as much. Or they're going to be worried for you. It's going to cause issues. Like a movement takes real work and sacrifice. And sometimes we try to convince ourselves that, oh, we can affect this giant power structure if we just join the system, try to get a seat at the table, hold hands with XYZ, we can work our way up. But Malcolm, Allah yarhamah, has an amazing quote. I don't have it exact, but something along the lines of, he's almost questioning the idea is like, what does it mean to have a seat at the table if you're not allowed to eat what's on the menu? We always hear the opposite of, you're gonna be eaten up on the table if you don't have a seat there. But he's like, hey, like they might give you a seat at the table, but you have no input on what that meal is. So is that seat worth anything? And that to me is what I want people to, including myself, to really reflect on and internalize. Is that like, it's going to be a journey for a movement for freedom, and it's going to take us giving up things. And we have to be okay with that because that's how progress happens. It always requires sacrifice. There's never been a moment in history where sacrifice was not a part of a journey to gain something.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thanks, man. Thanks for being
I
here.
appreciate you,
Thanks for the
man.
conversation. And I thought it was very clever. You, it was like you made calculated connections to Palestine with almost every single thing that we talked about, if not
Oh,
everything.
oh man.
That's pretty cool, man, that you were able to candidly do that. So good on you.
Man, I wasn't on purpose, I can tell you that. But like you said, life isn't the same anymore, man. Life isn't the same. And it's a microcosm, Palestine, of almost every, I think, system or issue or topic we could ever talk about. We'll find it in there as a case study for us that we can learn from.
Yeah, true, true. I
Mm-mm-mm.
suppose until next time, inshallah.
Inshallah, man. God willing. Really appreciate you making the time. It's always an honor to hear your thoughts. I only wish I didn't talk so much and ask more questions to you. That's my only regret of this
No,
of
no, it
this.
was great, man. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.